Everyone, it's kind of hard to believe, but we're now at the final chapter of Dune, chapter 48. It's been about a year since I started this series, reading through the entire book of Dune here, and it's a big one. There's a lot going on. It's been an enjoyable experience, and I'm excited to give you a summary of this final chapter. I would ask if this series has been interesting to you that you'd help out the old YouTube algorithm there and give me a like and a subscribe, maybe interact down below in the comments. Tell me your overall thoughts of Dune. Have you read any of the other books? Would you recommend that I continue reading the other books of this series? I think there's five more of the main kind of canon, and then there's additional ones after that. It's something I'd personally be interested in doing, but would love to get a little bit of traction on these videos before I, make a full commitment. So yeah, please consider that. And now moving into the summary, Paul is now back in the old mansion of his father, Duke Leto, and he's kind of amassing his loyalists around him. You got Gurney Halleck, you got Jessica, his sister Aaliyah's there, Chani comes in, Stilgar, of course, some other folks, and Paul is sort of ruminating on his victory, and he still has weighing heavily on him kind of what's coming next, likely, and this is this larger movement across the Emperor, because at this point he's pretty much won. He owns is the wrong word, but he's in control of Arrakis, both as a duke, which is kind of more relevant title from the Empire's perspective, but also as the Muad'Dib or Quasic Haderach, and sort of this religious figure that is leading all the Fremen. And the Fremen are now like the new Sardaukar. They're hardcore fighters, and they're going to, according to Paul's vision, essentially go on a jihad and conquer all the Empire. At this point, because Paul's won the immediate battle on Arrakis, the Emperor is holed up in his spaceship, essentially, his craft, with his loyalists in the Sardaukar, and Paul calls for the Emperor to be brought in so he can kind of establish himself as the new overall leader of the Empire. But one thing he needs to do is he intends to marry, in words only, the Emperor's daughter, Princess Arulan, if I'm pronouncing that right. And Jessica's not necessarily thrilled about this. She doesn't want Paul to make the same mistake she says that Leto did in terms of playing a lot of politics, maybe at the expense of even love, because Jessica was always Duke Leto's concubine, but never a wife, which, she obviously didn't love that fact, even if she understood it. And Chani's Paul's real love interest, and she's not necessarily thrilled with this either, but she also understands it. But Paul is pretty much at this point, this has to happen. It's the only way to bring the all the other houses under his control. So it's definitely going to be a political move. So the Emperor comes in, and he's very humbled at this point. I mean, I think he still thinks he's going to win, and I'll get to that in a minute. But some people with him include Thufir Hawat, who was the old mentat of Paul and Duke Leto, and Paul's pretty excited to see him. He's really missed his old mentor, and Thufir also, is kind of excited to see Paul. He goes up to essentially embrace him or give him a hug, and then all of a sudden he starts keeling over, and you find out the reason why is the Emperor had given him a poison pin with the intent of killing Paul. But as I understand it, and Frank Herbert throughout this book leaves some to interpretation, but I think this for the reader, but I think this one's pretty clear. He actually knocked out himself with the needle, so he dies, and then that kind of ends his whole thread. But he's reconciled with Paul at this point, so that was kind of a nice send off for him. And he also reconciles with Jessica. He realizes that his disgust for her was unfounded. She really wasn't the one who betrayed Leto. It was the doctor instead. So another person in the room. This is an interesting development, and I guess it was mentioned in the last chapter too. Is Aaliyah had taken out Baron Harkonnen, even though she's only like a little kid. She's like, I don't know, she's fairly hardcore. She's like, "Don't worry, brother. It was quick and easy. There wasn't any pain." And he's kind of like, "All right, cool. He's gone." But I do think the Baron's final ending there, because it was behind the scenes, I was disappointed in that, to be honest with you. And I see why they would have switched that in the movie to have Paul kind of like have the final say in that development. I didn't like that. I get it, but I didn't love that when it comes to the what happened in the book. Another person with the Emperor, of course, is Fade Rotha, and I'll get to him in a moment because it's kind of how the whole thing finally wraps up. And if you watch the movie, either movie, there's one from the 80s as well, and of course the more modern one, you know that this is really where the epic conclusion of the story occurs. But before we get into that, there's more politicking, and you realize how well Paul has set things up to control not only the politics from the side of being the leader like the Emperor, but also taking control of the guild, who are really kind of the behind the scenes group truly in charge, because they control the money, they control the spice, they control the money. And a couple of guild folks are actually there with the Emperor, and they have a little bit of a negotiation with Paul, trying to make things more favorable for them. But Paul's basically like, look, I can pretty much nuke all the spice on Arrakis, and you got nothing at that point. And they're like, well, they're pushing back a little bit, but ultimately Paul is just being so hardcore here because he's won. I mean, there's nothing anyone can do. That they basically are humbled to and back down, and they realize they have to serve and submit to Paul now because he controls Arrakis, he controls the spice, so now he controls the guild. That's a very interesting piece from the book that was essentially absent from the movie, that I thought was kind of cool. So now the Emperor, he's kind of the last one Paul needs to deal with here, and he's very, very upset that Paul is going to be taking his daughter, and he knows as well as anybody that means Paul's officially in charge. The Emperor's rule is done, and Paul says, "Hey, you're still going to get to rule." Forgive me, I forget the name of the planet, but where the Sardaukar are from, it's kind of a nasty planet, and he's not in love with that deal. But Paul's just like, "Look, that is your punishment, essentially." And frankly, I would think the Emperor should just be happy that he's not going to get knocked out right then and there. But there's one more little trick up everyone's sleeve, and that is Fade Rotha challenges Paul to a final duel. And Paul, being Paul, and kind of just in this state of my whole purpose is for this jihad to take place because of what he's seen. Whether I live or die, that's going to happen, and he just kind of wants to let fate play out. So he accepts Fade Rotha's challenge. And Fade Rotha and him get in the ring. Paul has like his Kryze knife. Fade Rotha has some sort of dagger or whatever. But of course, Fade also has tricks up his sleeve. He's got like a poison needle connected to his waist or something. So he's going to do some move and poke Paul and try to kill him that way. And as they begin to battle, Paul is being very methodical as he has been trained from like Thufir Hawat or Gurney Halleck, or even from the Bene Gesserit perspective. And he's a little more chill and kind of learns Fade Rotha's moves, while Fade's being a little mouthy and a little less disciplined. And of course, after Fade gets some light blows on Paul eventually gets him down, calls out the fact that he's was going to poison Paul. In fact, Paul even did a little something to poison Fade, which annoyed Fade. Like, hey, Paul's like, fair is fair. And Fade gets what's coming to him. So he's gone now. He's completely out of the picture. And Paul is now, the new big boss, essentially. The chapter ends in a very interesting way, and it's really a reflection on the fact that Paul is going to be marrying the princess, but he talks to Chani and he's like, "Don't worry, you're my only love. I will never," he's never going to touch the princess. There'll be zero intimacy. And they talk about the princess being kind of just a lover of books, and that she better be happy because she's just going to be stuck in the library all day thinking about stuff. And they were kind of, I don't know, it was kind of mean sounding, to be honest with you. Well, I guess she still gets to be essentially the queen of the universe. And then Jessica and Chani just have a reflection. This is literally how the chapter ends, that even though they're both concubines, history will revere them as wives, which is just an interesting thing that's how the whole story ends with that that concept being played out. Now, there's one other thing that I failed to mention that's kind of occurred during this whole discussion between Paul and the other group is the main Reverend Mother was there too, and she's kind of having a mental debate with Paul. She's really frustrated about this because I guess she's the one who ultimately kind of created him, because the Bene Gesserit had been doing this weird DNA stuff where they're trying to create superhumans or something, and Paul ended up being one of them. There's also this guy named Count Fenric, and he's there as well. And Paul, when he sees him, realizes he has some major relevancy to Paul's future. He wonders if he's the guy who's eventually going to kill Paul. And I don't know this. The book's kind of like foreshadowing that. But you find out that he too is, part of this whole DNA program. But the Emperor wants Fenric to go knock out Paul right then and there. But Fenric has this sort of like camaraderie with Paul. He's like, nope, not going to do it. And so he just kind of stands there and lets the whole battle with Feyd-Rautha and everything happen. So my guess is that more about the Count, and he was only briefly alluded to earlier in the book when they were kind of first showing off Feyd-Rautha's, fighting skills back on Harkonnen's planet. But they're kind of building him up as potentially a major character. So I'm interested to see, if I continue reading, what happens there. So that pretty much does it. We've hit the end. This has been quite the journey for me going through the book, and I've never read a book like this and done a chapter by chapter summary. If you come across these videos and you enjoyed it, thank you for watching. I know it's not the most high quality YouTube situation here. I'm just starting out. But again, read through the whole thing, provided some thoughts, and I would encourage you, if you did get through the whole series here, or even watched a couple of these videos, I definitely would recommend the book. I feel just a little bit smarter after reading this. It's written very well. The prose is very, very nice. There's a couple things that are a little weird, but I think it's mostly because it was, probably 40 plus some years ago this was written. Just a different time, different style. But it's significantly different than modern books you'll read, again, in terms of prose. But yeah, I would recommend it. You also can see some of how it was obviously an influence to, like, Star Wars as an example. It's incredible once you actually read it to see some of the similarities. And I think probably just like Lord of the Rings influenced fantasy so much for decades and decades, I think Dune also influenced sci-fi in a similar way. So give it a look. I definitely recommend it. The style is going to be different if you're more invested and enjoy modern stuff. But, I think it's worth seeing different flavors of writing. So again, if you could subscribe, keep an eye on my content. I'm a sci-fi fantasy writer too. I got a lot of exciting stuff coming up in 2026. I'm relaunching the first book, Earth's Door, of my own sci-fi fantasy series, which is called The Song of Immaru. And I think it's something that if you enjoy Dune, some of the concepts within Dune especially, you'll definitely enjoy the Song of Immaru series too. But the great news is in summer I have like a fresh edition of Earth's Door coming out. And then I've written book 2, Crimson Light. So if you enjoy that, you can jump right into Crimson Light. And the timing between books for what I'm able to do, and again, these are high quality books. I'm putting a lot of effort into them, making sure they're being edited properly, etc. About every 2 years, I'll have a new one, and it's going to be a 3-book arc, then another 3-book arc, and then probably a final longer book to conclude everything. At least that's the plan as of today. So thanks again for following along here. Again, my name's PJ Dudek, and if you get a chance to read Dune, definitely would suggest it. Until we talk again, take care. Bye.